This particular spot that we're standing in right now is full of abundant yield. And 2 years ago was a hot, dry, west-facing slope with almost no quality topsoil. We wanted to take the piece of the property that was the hardest to navigate and seemingly the most impossible piece of the property to get a yield off of and make it the most abundant from the beginning. Here we have an example of a living ground cover. We have grapefruits on this slope as the perennial stability for the slope side. And then we've incorporated butternut squash as a living ground cover throughout the warm growing season. And I think I've discovered a nest of something really abundant. Here's a sunflower that's gone through its life process and its seeds have been harvested by birds. But this is an amazing indication of the fertility that's contained in the soils here, even just in the first year of production. We have this amazing sunflower, and it's an indicator that this could be a potentially viable crop to grow on a larger scale. So 2 years ago when we began, this soil was mainly just red clay and shale. And after multiple applications of compost tea, mulch, and cover crops, we started to generate a lot of biodiversity in this soil. And the structure is starting to change. We can actually get our hands down in this soil. A pretty nice crop of jelly palm fruit coming on. I think this year we're going to work on a jelly palm kombucha. On the slopes of the terrace, where there's loose soil that's prone to erosion, we've used stone to stabilize, and then also interplanted with perennials that have a long-lived root system that will stay there to stabilize for years and years to come. So we're in a climate here that's Mediterranean, but some particular spots push the temperature ranges of the subtropics, especially when you use something like a west-facing stone wall. So what's happening is when the sun sets in the evening, these stones bank that final heat that the sun releases before it goes down in the western sky. And then these stones radiate that heat out throughout the night to keep the temperatures up around sensitive crops like papaya. So this has created a warm microclimate for us to get this amazing tropical flavor. Here's a perennial vegetable. This is a tree chili. And what that means by it being a perennial is that this will continue to bear fruits year after year without the need for replanting. Therefore, we don't have to disturb the soil to obtain a yield continuously from a single crop. This is the Italian stone pine, the classic pine nut pine. Here's a good problem to have. We have so much abundance and production that, wow, how juicy is that? We have so much production here that there's surplus being generated. And the wildlife are utilizing this. We're having more and more diversity of species coming in here to obtain a yield and get the free lunch that's being afforded by our system. This is a massive watermelon, and this is just year one, where when water is being used, there's a bit of drip that comes off of this valve. Peppermint likes a lot of water, so this is a moist environment that is suitable for peppermint, so we put it where it likes to be. We understand the characteristics of the plants, and we put them in their right location to thrive. Some fabulous eggplant. So for the past 2 years, we've been continuously yielding figs. So I'm standing under a Pakistan mulberry, and here we can see the drain pipe that powers the rest of the system. And so from the diameter of this pipe, we can imagine the amount of water that's coming through here. So this pipe takes all the road surface area that sheds down this western side of the hill. So the water cascades down through this armored drainage, settles out, and then spreads itself out across this terrace underneath the canopy of these citrus trees. And here's a funny little observation. We've got rice growing in here. Rice has volunteered itself right here in the drainage point. Most likely it's come in with the compost that uses rice hulls as a material additive. So here we have a contour terrace. This catches that rainwater that comes through the pipe that we just saw. This is how citrus should be done. Citrus requires a lot of water. Here, it's allowed to receive a lot of water. This is not irrigation water. This is runoff from the road surface. Granted, it does get a bit of supplemental irrigation during the dry season, but when it rains, this entire thing fills with water and the trees suck it right in. They're also deep mulched and have been given lots of compost. These trees were almost dead when we started this project. The majority of the citrus on this side of the hill were dry, burned skeletons of trees. Now we have amazing, lush, high-yielding fruit trees. So here we are at a spillway point on this water harvesting feature. And so this is where it goes when it fills up. So once water has flooded this whole system here, it goes down this runway that's armored with rocks and moves into the next terrace. And so all of these terraces that are in series down this hill all have armored rock spillways so that the water is safely moved from one terrace to the next without creating erosion. But here we have vetiver grass, which we use often in our designs and is a permaculture plant in that it works really well for stabilizing soil and preventing erosion. It's also an excellent mulch crop and fodder for livestock. So we've used it in this scenario to help to catch sediment drift and stabilize this rock edge when we get a deluge of water coming off the road in a rain event. So we've moved down into the lower section of this property, and this is also a continuation of the contour terraces. Now this is less intensively managed. This is further away from the house site and further away from constant human presence. Now in the next few years we'll expand the management further down into here and start growing crops on the terraces. But for the time being we have fruit trees and nut trees that are maturing pretty rapidly on the terrace slopes. When we planted this plum last year, it was this tall. So in this system we have incorporated legume trees as nitrogen fixers and also as a canopy to help protect many of the fruit trees from sunburn in our hot summer season. This one here is Tipuana tipu, which is very common in this area and very fast growing. This was about half the height it is now a year ago. And so this is an incredible example of how we can rapidly sequester carbon and embody it in a tree and also generate mulch on site. Because after the summer season's over, we're going to start pruning these trees up into a canopy and take all the vegetation that comes off and turn it into a nitrogenous mulch for the trees surrounding. And to my left, we have bananas. Now, like we talked about with the papaya, these bananas are a subtropical to tropical plant that typically don't grow in this Mediterranean climate without putting them in the right microclimate space. But what we've also done is selected varieties that are proven to grow and fruit in this climate. These bananas were actually from the first commercial banana grower in California, which was in La Conchita several years ago. And this is a selection from all over the world of cold-tolerant banana varieties. I believe there's about 5 on site. These are apricots. And here we're starting to enter our avocado area. So we've placed probably about 5 varieties of avocados in here and given them a canopy of tipuana. So they're given sunburn protection and cold season frost protection and nitrogen through the root system of the tipuanas and eventually from the mulch of the tipuanas. I wanted to do an experiment because avocado is a major cash crop in this area, but typically it's grown up on exposed hillsides in full blazing sun and given lots and lots of water and fertility. And we wanted to kind of put it in its right environment or closer to that and see how the yields were in comparison to conventional management. So here we're standing next to an avocado, and you can see the color and the health in this leaf surface. I think a lot of its health is attributed to the fact that it's in close proximity to this tipuana, and also being sheltered from the summer season intensity that we get coming from the sun. Here we can clearly see the yield of a permaculture system. This system was designed with intent and context. The context from the inception was to feed people and to generate surplus. The client came to me with the request to develop a system that could provide high quality, diverse, organic food for people who need it, and for that to be given away freely. And we've done that, and we'll continue to do that. All of this is the product of good permaculture design, which you can learn in a permaculture design course with me at East End Eden. Thanks.